My boss asked if I thought he was a monster. There are certain things you never want to learn about your coworkers. Their browser history, whether they've committed tax fraud, and if one of your coworkers happens to be an angel older than civilization itself, what makes them angry. Unfortunately, I learned the last one the hard way. It all started with what should have been a routine retrieval mission. I had been out of the hospital for 3 weeks. Physically, the doctors had cleared me for field work. According to Angelo, however, I still required supervision, which was a polite way of saying he'd moved into my apartment. He never asked. One evening, he walked through my front door carrying a single duffel bag, claimed my couch, and simply never left. At first, I tried hinting. Then, I tried arguing. Eventually, I accepted that arguing with an ancient celestial entity who viewed social norms as optional was about as productive as arguing with gravity. Every morning, I'd wake to the smell of fresh coffee. Angelo would already be sitting on the couch, reading another book he'd somehow acquired overnight. I never saw him buy them. They just simply appeared. He brewed my coffee without asking, used my kitchen like he'd always lived there, watched documentaries at 3 in the morning. Once, I caught him watching 10 straight hours of courtroom footage because, according to him, human conflict resolution is fascinating. The strange part wasn't that he was living with me. It was that he'd started sleeping. Angels don't sleep. Angelo did. I'd worked with Angelo long enough to know he could stand perfectly still for days without blinking if the situation demanded it. Yet, every night, I'd find him asleep on my couch, a blanket draped over him like any ordinary person. The first night, I assumed he was pretending. The third night, I watched him have a nightmare. Not discomfort, not irritation, fear. Every day, Angelo seemed a little more human, and somehow that frightened me far more than the monsters we hunted. I tried not to think about it as I walked through C.S.P headquarters. By the time I reached my office, I'd almost convinced myself I was imagining things. Then, I saw the case file waiting on my desk. Retrieval request. I sighed and flipped it open. Subject, unknown. Classification, active divine event. Containment, not available. Objective, locate the affected deity. Determine the nature of the incident. Recover any surviving evidence. My eyes drifted to the final note. 4 investigative teams have already been deployed. None have returned. I read the sentence twice. That's new. Normally, when a team went missing, we sent a rescue team. This wasn't a rescue anymore. 4 teams had already disappeared. I picked up my radio. Jacob answered after a few seconds. What? No greeting, no good morning. Just irritation. Apparently, he was still mad about Sean. Honestly, I didn't care. Why do you keep sending me reports with almost no information? I asked. I'm supposed to retrieve a missing god, but you didn't even tell me which one. Silence. It lasted long enough that I checked the radio to make sure the connection hadn't died. When Jacob finally spoke, his voice sounded different. Do you really not understand? Understand what? I sent 4 investigation teams. He paused. I did everything I could. Another pause. They never came back. The annoyance drained out of me. Jacob wasn't angry. He was scared. Where's the god? Serbia. I frowned. Where in Serbia? You'll have to ask Jeff. Why? Because he's the only one who came back. Came back? Alive. I cut the line as I leaned back in my chair. Jeff, another coworker who hated me. In my defense, I'd once used his cargo plane as an improvised missile during a retrieval mission. He'd been holding a grudge ever since. If there was anyone in C.S.P. capable of surviving an extinction-level supernatural disaster, refusing to explain what happened, and somehow making it everyone else's problem, it was Jeff. A second later, the line clicked. I see you survived Nevada, Jeff said. Unfortunately. Good to hear your voice too. What do you want? I need you to take my team to Serbia. Silence. Jeff? What makes you think you'll retrieve the god when 4 teams have already failed? Because C.S.P. assigned the case to me? Another long pause. Fair enough. I grabbed a pen. So where are we going? I'm not discussing it over the radio. What? You heard me. Jeff. I'm serious. The sarcasm had disappeared from Jeff's voice. C.S.P. gave me strict orders not to disclose the location. He hesitated before letting out a quiet sigh. Also, it doesn't exist on any map. Even if I wanted to tell you, I couldn't. I frowned. What does that mean? It means you'll understand when we get there. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting, he said. And if you die, I'm not filling out the paperwork. I wouldn't expect you to, I sighed. The line went dead. I immediately called an emergency briefing. 2 hours later, 500 security personnel, 30 negotiators, and 10 medical teams stood assembled in the operations room, waiting for instructions. No one knew what we were walking into. We didn't know which god had appeared, what had happened to the 4 investigation teams, or even what we were supposed to retrieve. All we had was a destination that didn't exist on any map, and a guide who refused to explain how to get there. In other words, we were going in blind. 10 minutes later, I boarded the transport plane. Angelo was already inside, sitting exactly where I'd expected him to be, waiting. What are you doing here? I asked.
Coming with you.
I didn't have the energy to argue.
I didn't see you this morning.
I was in a briefing.
I see.
Jeff was leaning against the cockpit with his arms crossed. He shot me the same look he'd been giving me since the missile incident. I ignored him. The flight passed quickly, mostly because I slept through most of it. About 3 hours later, I woke up with the unmistakable feeling that someone was watching me. I opened my eyes. Angelo was staring at me from the seat beside mine. He didn't even pretend to look away. Can I help you?
You appeared peaceful.
You were watching me sleep because I looked peaceful?
Yes.
I sighed. Somehow, I had gotten used to his staring problem. We finally arrived at the location. Jeff led us into a narrow mountain tunnel. We walked for what felt like miles, descending through layer after layer of solid rock. 15, maybe 20 levels. The deeper we went, the stranger it became. There were no shrines, no followers, no sign that a god had ever existed there. Only talismans, thousands of them, nailed into the walls, hanging from cracks in the stone, or left in neat piles that had long since turned to dust. Eventually, the tunnel opened into a cavern so vast, the ceilings vanished into darkness. Thousands more talismans hung from rusted chains anchored high above us. Paper charms covered in prayers written in forgotten languages swayed beside shattered crucifixes, cracked Buddhist seals, broken stone tablets, rusted bells, and relics from religions I'd never even heard of. It looked as though every civilization in history had come to this place and failed to destroy whatever was waiting inside, settling for imprisoning it instead. A single stone bridge stretched across a bottomless chasm. At its center stood the god. Calling it a god feels wrong now. Truthfully, I don't remember what it looked like. I remember thinking it was impossibly tall. I remember strips of something hanging from its body, skin, maybe, or cloth. I remember 6 arms, or 7, maybe none. I don't know anymore. I remember the eyes. Too many eyes. The rest is gone. Every time I try to picture it, the memory changes. The worst part wasn't its appearance. It was the certainty that my mind refused to process what I was seeing. Every blink rearranged it. One moment, it stood perfectly still. The next, its neck seemed to twist backward. Then it was facing us, despite never moving. My eyes couldn't agree on where its limbs ended, or even how many limbs it had. Only then did I notice the silence. No wind, no footsteps, no breathing. "My lord," I called. Nothing. I stepped onto the bridge. "We came to make a proposition." Still nothing. No priests, no worshippers, no followers. Every god had followers. Then I heard it. A groan. I looked behind me, but no one on my team had made a sound. Slowly, I raised my flashlight. The beam climbed higher and reached the ceiling. I froze. Hundreds of eyes stared back. The ceiling wasn't rock. It was people. Their bodies had been fused into a living carpet, stretching across the cavern. They crawled over one another without making a sound. Their necks bent impossibly backward, so every face remained fixed on us. Arms and legs protruded at impossible angles. Fingers digging into flesh instead of stone, as though gravity no longer mattered. None of them blinked. None of them spoke. They just watched. Then I understood what we'd been walking beneath. Every layer we've descended through hadn't been empty. The ceilings, every single one had been covered with people. Not hundreds, not thousands, hundreds of thousands. The mountain wasn't hollow. The mountain was built with them. We had descended nearly 20 levels, each one packed with fused human bodies stretching farther than my flashlight could reach. There had to be over 500,000 of them. That's when I realized this wasn't a normal class god. This was something far worse. An SS class god. A medic behind me gasped. The sound echoed through the cavern. Every face turned toward him at once. Then the god moved. Slowly, impossibly slowly, it raised its head. The eyes beneath the rotting wrappings opened together. When it spoke, it wasn't a voice. It was pressure.
How dare.
The talismans throughout the cavern began to tremble.
Mere humans.
Dust rained from the ceiling.
Enter the sanctuary.
The final word shook the cavern. Above us, the mass of human bodies began to crawl. Bones cracked, limbs twisted. Hundreds of fused mouths opened in perfect silence as they dragged themselves across the ceiling, moving like insects beneath skin that should never have been alive. Then everything stopped. The creatures froze mid-crawl. The talismans hanging throughout the cavern fell still. Even the dust suspended in the air seemed to stop falling. The god wasn't looking at me anymore. It was staring at Angelo. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then, the god laughed. Not with amusement, with disbelief. A deep, broken laugh that echoed throughout the mountain until the walls themselves began to tremble. Angelo frowned.
Do I know you?
The god's laughter grew louder, almost desperate. You, it managed between broken fits of laughter.
You truly don't remember.
It took a slow step onto the bridge, and stone groaned beneath its weight.
Look at me.
Angelo didn't respond.
Look at me.
The bridge exploded beneath our feet. A crack raced toward us as the roar slammed into my chest hard enough to steal my breath. Then, I saw it. Recognition. I almost missed it. Angelo's expression shifted by less than an inch.
You.
The god smiled.
There you are, Uncle.
Uncle? Its grin widened beyond anything a face should be capable of.
I wondered if guilt had finally devoured your memories.
Its eyes drifted to me.
So, this is what you've become.
It looked me up and down like a scientist studying an insect.
A human.
Then it laughed again.
Tell me, child. Has he told you?
He said as his eyes locked onto mine. Told me what? I asked, forcing far more confidence into my voice than I actually felt.
Nairi,
Angelo said quietly.
don't answer another word.
The god ignored him.
Has he told you about his kin?
My stomach tightened. That book in the library. 3 angels descended into Antarctica. 3 angels created the first gods. Slowly, I turned towards Angelo. The god's smile became predatory.
Did he tell you that he murdered them?
The cavern shook.
He butchered his brother.
Talismans burst into green fire.
He slaughtered his sister.
The bridge groaned beneath our feet.
He tore heaven apart with his own hands.
Every fused human hanging from the ceiling screamed, not one after another, but all at once. The sound didn't echo. It became the cave.
And now?
The god raised one trembling finger toward Angelo.
You dare stand before me wearing that face?
Angelo lowered his eyes.
You know why I did it.
No.
The god's voice turned cold enough to hurt.
I know what you have became. You abandoned your own blood. You abandoned heaven. You abandoned Mother.
Its voice fractured into something between grief and hatred.
You chose humans.
It pointed at me. Over us.
I chose reality.
Angelo replied. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The words echoed through the cavern anyway. Quiet, certain. The god screamed.
Liar.
The ceiling burst apart. Thousands of twisted bodies dropped at once. It sounded like rain. Rain made of flesh. Contact! Someone behind me shouted. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the cavern like lightning, tearing through the darkness in rapid bursts. It made no difference. The creatures never slowed. One landed on a negotiator, folding his spine backward until it snapped. Another tore through an exorcist's protective seals as though they were wet paper. A medic disappeared beneath a writhing pile of bodies. He only screamed once. I emptied my rifle into the first 3 creatures that reached the bridge. One collapsed. The other 2 didn't even slow down. Something slammed into my chest, throwing me onto stone hard enough to drive the air from my lungs. Before I could recover, one of the creatures landed on top of me. It looked almost human. Almost. Its jaw split impossibly wide, revealing row after row of human teeth. Hot saliva dripped onto my face as it lunged for my throat. Then, everything became white. Not bright, white. The light didn't fill the cavern. It erased it. Darkness ceased to exist. Shadows disappeared. Even the screaming stopped. The creature above me convulsed as smoke poured from its skin. It didn't burn. It simply came apart. I looked up. Angelo was gone. Something else stood where he'd been. Even now, I can't tell you what I saw. Every time I remember it, the memory changes. I remember wings. 16 of them, or maybe more. I remember thousands of eyes opening across white feathers. Or were the eyes inside of the light itself? I don't know. I only remember that reality stopped making sense around him. The air bent. The stone beneath his feet cracked without breaking. Space folded in ways my eyes refused to follow. Looking directly at him felt like trying to remember a dream while it was still happening. The god looked up, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear on the face of an SS-class god. How? It stumbled backward. No! Its voice trembled. Please! Angelo raised one hand. No chant, no sigil, no effort. He simply opened his palm. The universe obeyed. There was no beam, no explosion, no impact. The god simply stopped existing. Its body unraveled into drifting ash. Its bones became glowing dust. Only its voice lingered. You'll always be the monster who destroyed heaven. The sentence vanished. Not interrupted. Erased. Across the cavern, every twisted human collapsed at once. Thousands of bodies dissolved before they touched the ground. The flames died. The screaming ended. Silence returned as gray ash drifted through the air like snow. Then it was over. The wings were gone. The eyes vanished. Reality settled back into place. Angelo stood exactly where he'd been before. He brushed ash from his sleeve, straightened his tie, and adjusted his jacket as though he'd done nothing more exhausting than finish paperwork. No one moved. 500 armed agents, 30 negotiators, and 10 medical teams stood frozen, staring at him without a word. For the first time since I'd met Angelo, I understood why gods feared angels. We walked back to the transport in complete silence, and no one spoke during the 5-hour flight home. Not Jeff, not the negotiators, not even the security teams. After seeing an angel's true form, none of us were entirely sure we still remembered what one looked like. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the god's voice.
Has he told you about his kin? He butchered his brother. He slaughtered his sister.
I kept catching myself looking over at Angelo. He sat alone near the front of the aircraft, staring out the window. Just yesterday, I'd thought of him as a strange stray cat who'd wandered into my apartment, stolen my coffee, claimed my couch, and somehow convinced himself he lived there. Now, he looked like someone I'd never met. When we landed, I lost sight of him almost immediately. Several senior C.S.P. officials quietly escorted him away while I was sent straight to Madame Lenny's office for an emergency debriefing. She didn't even let me sit down. You took 500 personnel into an uncharted divine zone? She asked, skimming through my report. Jacob approved this? I nodded. Her jaw tightened. I'm going to have a word with Jacob. She kept reading. As she reached the section describing the cave, her expression hardened. Then she reached the final pages. The room fell silent. He saved all of you, she murmured. He did. She closed the file slowly. We owe him more than we'll ever be able to repay. She didn't say anything else for a long time. Then she looked up at me. For the first time since I'd known Madame Lenny, I saw absolute fear in her eyes. Before today, Angelo had been a dangerous ally. Now, he had become something far worse. A being the C.S.P. had no way to contain if he ever decided to stand against us. By the time I got home, exhaustion had finally caught up with me. I barely made it to my bedroom before collapsing onto the mattress, still wearing my blood-stained uniform. When I woke up a few hours later, the apartment was dark. Angelo sat exactly where he always did on the couch, but something was different. There was no book in his hands, no mug of coffee on the table, no documentary playing quietly in the background. He was just sitting. Angelo? He didn't look at me.
Nayeri,
His voice was barely above a whisper.
do you think I'm a monster?
The question hit me harder than any god ever had. I stood frozen in my bedroom doorway. A few hours ago, I'd watch him erase an ancient god from existence. Now he sounded like someone terrified of the answer to a simple question. I began. Nothing came out. The room fell silent.
My mother disappeared.
He said quietly. He paused.
She entrusted reality to us.
Your mother? I said slowly. You mean the creator? He nodded.
She named every star, every creature, every law that governs existence.
The church god's words echoed through my mind.
When the first voice shaped existence, every star, every god, and every living thing was given a name.
Angelo had gone quiet for a moment before speaking again.
She named me too.
My mind snapped back to the page I'd found in the library. The creator of the universe fashioned 3 angels to preserve reality. 3 angels. And the first voice had named them herself. You were supposed to keep order, I murmured.
We did.
His eyes never left the wall. For a very long time. What happened?
My siblings believed Mother had abandoned us.
His voice remained perfectly calm.
They decided that they could replace her.
I felt my stomach tighten.
They created the gods, beings that were never supposed to exist.
He finally looked at me.
They created life Mother never intended.
The god today,
My sister's first creation.
his expression softened for the first time.
She named him Aram.
A painful smile crossed his face.
I taught him how to speak.
The realization made me sick. So, he really was your nephew?
Yes.
Silence settled over the apartment. So why? I asked quietly. Why kill them? His answer came immediately.
Because I had to.
He didn't raise his voice. He didn't try to justify himself.
It is the first law Mother gave us.
He closed his eyes.
Protect reality, no matter the cost. My siblings broke that law. They tried to remake creation. They would have destroyed everything Mother made.
So you stopped them.
I obeyed.
The words were almost empty. Not proud, not defensive, just tired. That was the only word that fit. The god's accusation echoed through my mind.
You chose humanity.
No, he hadn't. Humanity had simply survived because reality had. He hadn't killed his siblings to save us. He'd killed them because, if he hadn't, there wouldn't have been a universe left to save. I walked over and sat beside him on the couch. The cushions sank beneath our weight, but neither of us said anything. For what it's worth, I said quietly. He looked at me. I don't think you're a monster. He didn't react. His expression stayed as unreadable as ever. You did exactly what the Creator asked you to do. You protected reality. You protected every living thing that has ever existed. I hesitated. You've been carrying that responsibility for what? Millions of years? His gaze drifted toward the floor. Longer. The room felt silent again. So you've been doing all of this alone? He gave a small nod. No self-pity, no complaint. Just a simple acknowledgement of fact. I smiled sadly. Then, thank you. For the first time that evening, he looked confused.
For what?
For protecting reality. For saving humanity, even if that was never your intention. For carrying a burden no one else could. I swallowed. And for carrying it alone. He simply stared at me. I don't think anyone had ever thanked him before. Not his siblings, not the gods, not humanity. Not in all the countless years he'd existed. The ancient angel who had stood unmoved before monsters, gods, and the end of worlds was completely speechless. For the first time since I'd met Angelo, he didn't know what to say.
Thank you,
He repeated, as though testing the words for the first time. He frowned.
They feel
He searched for the right word.
unfamiliar.
I'll take that as a compliment.
It is.
Silence settled over the apartment. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke again.
I should be thanking you.
I blinked. Me?
You
A pause.
and the CSP.
That caught me completely off guard. For what?
For trying.
He folded his hands neatly in his lap.
You are insignificant compared to the beings you pursue. You lack the strength to oppose them, the knowledge to understand them, and you know that most retrieval missions will likely end in your deaths.
His eyes met mine.
And yet, you still go.
I didn't have an answer for that. After a long silence, he said quietly,
Mother believed humanity possessed something my siblings never understood.
"What?"
Compassion.
He glanced toward me.
I have spent an eternity protecting reality.
His gaze drifted to the CSP badge lying on my kitchen counter.
But today, I realized I have neglected those who protect it.
I frowned. What do you mean?
The fractures between realities are increasing. The gods have become reckless. The things beyond creation have begun to move again.
He said it with the same calm tone someone might use to comment on the weather.
The CSP is humanity's greatest attempt to preserve reality. But it does so blindly. It does not understand what it faces, repeating mistakes because no one remains to teach it.
A knot formed in my stomach. What are you saying? He stood. For just a moment, he stopped looking like the awkward angel who stole my couch and my coffee. Instead, I saw the being who had stood alone above an ancient god, with 16 wings spread across the cavern. I believed observing was enough. He picked up the CSP identification badge and turned it over in his hand.
I was mistaken.
I stared at him. He looked at the badge for a long moment before clipping it neatly to his jacket.
My first duty was to preserve reality.
He adjusted his tie.
So I will no longer remain a spectator.
Another pause.
I will lead.
The words weren't spoken with ambition or pride. They were spoken like someone accepting an obligation that should have been fulfilled long ago. For some reason, those 4 words frightened me far more than the 16 wings ever had. I didn't ask any more questions. Something told me I wouldn't like the answers. Neither of us spoke again that night. The apartment fell silent. My phone rang at 6:12 the next morning. The caller ID read, Madame Lenny. I answered immediately. Morning, ma'am. Nayeri. Her voice sounded off. Not scared, stunned. I need you at headquarters immediately. I sat up. What happened? There was a long pause. Then she sighed. Angelo happened. My stomach dropped. What did he do? He requested a meeting with the executive board at 5 this morning. I was already getting dressed. What are you talking about? Madame Lenny let out a slow breath. The board voted. My hand froze on the doorknob. Voted? They've appointed Angelo as one of the executive board members of the C.S.P. Silence. He starts today. I couldn't find the words. They actually agreed? They didn't have much of a choice. Her voice was barely above a whisper. When the first angel tells you he's going to help preserve reality, you don't tell him no. The line went dead. I turned toward the living room. Angelo was exactly where I'd left him the night before, curled up on the couch with a book in one hand, a mug of coffee in the other, and an open pack of sour gummies balanced on his knee, as though he hadn't just become one of the most powerful people in the C.S.P. Some stories end when the words stop. Others don't end at all. If you enjoyed this story, there are many more waiting in the dark. Until next time.